Wonderful to have you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you for being here, Maria. So,
It's so refreshing to see a room full of women.
absolutely.
Yeah, I love this.
We had a couple guys here this morning, but I think they're
let's kick them
gone.
out. Yeah, no. we'll kick them out. I was saying I'm a little worried that we're doing a talk at like 12 noon. Usually the talks are better later when you have wine and you have like beer, and so
We could have
a few
offered
things
you
could slip, but let's see how we get through this one. Yeah.
So we've been talking, Maria, a lot about kind of how to navigate your career, okay? So I think your career began earlier than practically any woman in this room. Your career, I would think, tell me if you think about it this way, actually started at age 11 when you got your
It
first
goes way
endorsement.
back. Yes.
Which
Is
was
that what was that? I was 11.
I
Yes,
think
with
so,
Yes,
Nike.
I believe with Nike. That was my
Nike.
first. Yeah. So I started playing this little sport at 4 years old. I moved to the United States from Russia. I was born in Siberia. Moved to Sochi. That's where I began playing tennis. Martina Navratilova was really like the first person to ever see me at the age of 4 and tell my dad that I had somewhat of a potential. I don't know what she saw when she watched me play at 4 years old. And then at 7, I found myself arriving at the Miami International Airport and playing tennis for the rest of my career. And yes, 11 was when I first signed a small deal with Nike and been with them ever since.
So, thinking about your career beginning at such an early age, did you have an idea at age 11 of two things? What a successful career is and what money is all about?
Are we talking about money today? Oh, this is fortune. That's
Fortune.
right. That small thing. No, at 11, I really had. We kind of planted ourselves at the Bollettieri Tennis Academy, which was like the factory for tennis greats. And you saw Agassi and Hingis and the Williams sisters and everyone trained there. And I knew that I was in this elite group, as they called it, of phenoms, and that maybe one of them would make it to the top. And I actually didn't realize the power of someone in a suit until I was boarding at the academy with a few other girls older than I was, and Nick Bollettieri called me out onto center court around 7 p.m. And that was like a no-go, especially at that age and at that time. And I remember walking out to the court, and Nick Bollettieri was surrounded by a group of about 5 men in suits. And I was like, whoa, something's going on here. And then he's like, well, we have these investors coming into the academy, and you're one of our greatest talents, youngsters. Would you mind hitting some balls? And I was like, oh, so this is what it's about. There's something on the line.
This is America.
Well, I didn't quite realize it yet because I was just perfecting my English at that time. But that's when I realized that there's something to this. And I remember walking back to my dorm and saying, you know what, first of all, this was prime time, and I love it. I love the fact that a coach like Nick Bollettieri called me out onto center court and put me on the spot and wanted to showcase me in front of these investors. And that was like my first sense of, okay, there's something about money here.
Wow. And you and your father came to Florida, came to America with what, $700?
Yes, my father had $700, which I believe maybe in Russia could get you somewhere at that time. Not in the United States. Definitely not in Miami or anywhere there. But yes, we came to Miami. We found a bus to Bradenton, Florida, which was 4 hours away. We stayed at a motel. My dad had the $700 bills rolled up, put it under the pillow. Next morning, we were going to knock at the Bollettieri Academy because they had no clue we were coming. He forgot the money under the pillow. But then took a very quick taxi back. The room service lady attendant was in the room, and they hadn't done the bed yet, and he got his money back. Yes. So it's been an incredible journey, and one that I look back upon and think, for one example of myself, I know that there's so many examples that didn't follow through and didn't have the success that I've had, and there are so many different paths that you can take, particularly at a very young age. And if you're not surrounded by the right people at the right time, you don't get in a position of opportunity. But then what do you do with the opportunity, right? Then you have to take it into your own hands, and you have to, with the similar people around you, grow from there.
You've probably, I sense that you have thought of your career more broadly than a lot of your colleagues in the world of professional tennis. And at what point, Maria has a company called Sugarpova and has various candy company and has several business ventures going on. But at what point did you start thinking of I need a career more broadly than tennis?
Right.
And by the way, we just had Danica Patrick on stage here talking similarly. But how did you think of that, and when did you think of that?
So I had shoulder surgery at the age of 21. I had just won my 3rd Grand Slam, and it was 21 years old. I was playing some of my best tennis in my career, and having shoulder surgery, I realized that something that was so automatic, natural, something I'd wake up to every morning, was somewhat in a very different context, was being taken away from me. And from that point on, very fortunately, being part of like blue chip brands that I could be the face of, an ambassador of, that I sat in meetings with. But at the end of the day, I was a very small part of Nike. I was a very small part of Tag Heuer. I was a very small part of a car brand. And I felt like I wanted to take ownership, because ownership was something I had most of the time in my career. Like my wins and my losses were all controlled by what I had in my hands. And yes, there's a team around you that helps you get there, but ultimately you take all that responsibility. And so I wanted that responsibility with a business. I had this childhood memory of bringing back sweets from the United States to Russia, and I saw these gummy candies in a movie theater, and I had never seen that did not exist in Russia. So I was like, wow, this is so cool, and I brought it back to my friends. And thinking of that childhood memory, then the name Sugarpova came about. I did research. I hired a confectionery assistant, and we came up with this company. And now we're in chocolate. We're in over 20 different countries in the world. The confectionery business is a $160 billion business worldwide, and it's like growing 3% every year. And I was like, well, I can scale in that. And and here we are.
We have the head of Hershey here. We have women from Mars here. I bet they're feeling seriously threatened right now.
No.
They may want to buy you. They may want to buy. Do you disclose
We have a lot
revenue?
of growth to do.
Do you disclose revenue?
I really don't, because I feel like, I don't want this to be an expensive hobby, that's for sure. I want this to be profitable, but it takes time to grow.
Is it profitable yet?
I think we're even at this point.
And you put $500,000 of your own money into it?
6 years ago. Yeah, and it's a roller coaster. Some days we're now moving all our chocolate and truffles are all natural ingredients, and we're changing our gummies into that, because that business, there's a whole other avenue in the healthy world.
I'm going to ask you a question that I think I might know the answer to, but maybe not.
Uh-oh.
What was the low point in your career?
I've definitely had a few. I would say in the last few years, it was my suspension and being away from the sport for over a year. And it was an incredible learning lesson. I think I was always so determined and so focused, and everyone, saw this persona of a very tough shield around me and a tough guard. And I know I learned a lot about vulnerability. I learned about opening up and sharing about feelings. And I think it connects you on a completely different level than you'd ever imagine yourself to go through. And the connection I have to my sport has grown so much more, because you learn the meaningful behind it and the reasons why you do it. Like, what is it? Why do you wake up? And why do you do what you do? Which I think when you start something at a very young age, it's very easy to just do it on a very repetitive level and not really understand what is at the core of it.
Right.
And how you impact it.
So for those of you who don't know, in 2016, Maria was given a 15-month suspension. It was a 2-year suspension, reduced to 15 months for using a product called meldonium, which had been legal and you had used for many years, and then became illegal in 2016, and you got suspended for using it. And I'm going to open it up to the floor. I certainly have.
I feel like we're at the Oscars. There's like a time limit here. Like, like what happens if we go over? Does something happen? Do they like take us off of the stage?
Maria. Oh yeah, they're really tough here.
I'm like, it's like staring at me.
Who has a question or a comment or anyone? Yes, here, and wait for the mic, please, and identify yourself.
Hi, Lisa Bernstein from Apollo. Could you just tell us what's on your sneaker?
Oh, thank you.
Good question.
It's an art. I love art, so I collect art pieces, and this is based on an art piece that I received for my birthday, and it's basically all like Warhol owns pop, and then Johns owns the flag, and so it's basically what each artist owns in their career, and I think Picasso owns a century and things like that. Yeah. I drew it myself, so I apologize.
You actually, you drew all that?
Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic.
No, not really.
Who else? Yes, over here, Jane Fraser.
Hi, Jane Fraser. Can you talk a bit about how you've built mental resilience?
Mental resilience. I've built it by learning. So I didn't grow up having like a proper formal education, and I did homeschooling via internet. I finished high school on the internet, but I never had like an official classroom experience, which in some ways I have missed, but I believe that I became street smart. I began traveling around the world. I would be in corporate meetings where, yes, I would feel really small and shy and a female in a corporate business environment, but I learned. I grew up not asking many questions, and I became interested, and in order to be interesting, I do believe that you have to be interested in other things and people, and that shy layer kind of came off, and I now mentor 7 female business entrepreneurs, and that's a program that I started with Sugarpova along with the National Association of Business Owners. We mentor an incredible group of women that are getting themselves into the workforce, and that idea came about from, I thought of myself as if I didn't have the financial support, if I didn't have the marketing tools that I've built in the years that I've played my sport, and I just had an idea for this candy business, I wouldn't know about next steps, and I knew that there are many, many women in that position that I wanted to help. And so I think, no one in this room and no one outside of this room is perfect. I think we all want to be our best selves, and we all want to grow. I don't sit here today and say I'm confident in every aspect. I get just as excited by sitting in a room with these 7 women that have completely different, some are in fashion, some are in construction. I learn from them just as much as they learn from me, and that's how I see kind of my confidence coming into play, is by learning and growing.
Maria, what is power, in a sentence?
I think it's like an intuition. It's a deep feeling that's within you. Power is not always to look powerful and to speak powerfully. I think there's something in vulnerability, and there's something about sharing that's important. There's no perfect answer to it, but as long as you're striving to be your own powerful self, and to everyone that's a different meaning.
Beautiful words to end with.
Thank you.
We are ending, Maria. I know. We'll talk more backstage. Thank you, Maria Sharapova. Come back.
Thank you very much.